Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about manual labor or physically demanding jobs and training and how to balance the two a little bit and understanding what's going on. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Because this is an interesting topic. It's something a lot of people are going to have to deal with because most of you out there at some point in your life are possibly going to do a physically demanding job of some type. And physically demanding doesn't have to be hard manual labor. Physically demanding can be any job where you're on your feet, walking or standing for literally 8 or 10 hours a day. All right, and that can absolutely, when you're new to it especially, can absolutely affect your training in a way that seems overwhelming. And something that made me want to talk about this a little bit, I was chatting with Brittany about her situation. Brittany has always been kind of freelance with what she's been doing since we've been together. She's been mostly freelance. And she's continued her freelance work, but she does hair, makeup, a wide variety of stuff with that, special effects, everything else. And it's usually work on her feet. Some of it's sitting because she does a lot of prep at home and everything with things. But she went ahead and decided to go full-time with some of it also. And so she's actually doing a full-time job to where she's now standing, doing hair for 8 hours a day. She's on her feet 8 hours a day while continuing to do her freelance work while also lifting. And the thing that she's noticed after 2 weeks of doing this, that it's been very, very physically demanding. Because normally, she occasionally works a 12 or 16 hour day. Then takes the next day off from training. Two days off from training when she does some of those gigs, because weddings and stuff like that can be that way. And she'll make a really good chunk of money for one day's work, and in some cases make more money doing that than she would make doing something in a salon or a studio sometimes in a 5-day work week. So she's always done it that way and done the freelance, but she's really wanted to make it full time. So she's still doing special effects, makeup, stuff like that, weddings occasionally a little bit on the side as side work part-time while doing this full-time stuff, and the combination has definitely affected her ability to train. And we're still training, but she has lost almost all of her lower body strength. Things like deadlifts, we've gone from her being able to deadlift about 200 pounds for like a training max or do triples, 3-4 reps sometimes with 185. Just on a beltless conventional deadlift, down to her doing doubles with 135. And the doubles seem extremely heavy to her. So putting it in context, because it involves the lower body, and her lower body is really fatigued all the time. It's been really fatigued all the time. For the last 2 weeks, it's been really difficult for her to lift, and she's sore all the time. In fact, one of the things we've had to do to try to help with that, for as far as clearing out metabolites, things like that, is her doing a little bit of light cardio after work, like 10 to 20 minutes of list cardio after work every day. Does help alleviate some of the pain and everything of doing that. And you know what? And I've told her it takes about 3 weeks to adapt. So that's going to be the big point a lot of you guys and girls need to remember, is that if you're lifting fairly heavy when you start a new physically demanding job, and perfect example, a lot of you right now, you might even be in school. Younger guys, you might be in school. You don't work. You're sitting at a desk all day, and unless you go directly to a desk job, and a lot of you won't go to a desk job right out of college. That's the real world too. A lot of jobs you might do, you still might be on your feet all day. You might not be going to something physically demanding where you're lifting stuff or carrying stuff, but you might go over to something to where you have some sort of job on a sales floor or anything else, even some supervisory jobs. You might find yourself being like a working supervisor somewhere. You might find yourself even a medical doctor. You're going to have a job where oftentimes you're on your feet all day long. Same thing, you might find yourself, again, even if you're a nursing student, so you're going to be a registered nurse or something. These are people that are high demand degrees, high paying jobs, but you are on your feet sometimes for 12-hour shifts straight. And being on your feet walking when you're not used to it all day long every day will affect your training. And it usually takes people, for any workload like that, it takes them about 3 weeks to adapt. And because you're having to subject yourself to a higher work capacity, you're going to have to pay a lot more attention to recovery. Now, the longer you do a physically demanding job, the easier it is going to become for you to combine your weight training with it. But for a lot of people, they're going to have that tendency when they realize that their strength is down, their recovery is down, is to stop lifting, and do not do that. Because that's kind of how you see so many has-beens. You see so many people out there, oh yeah, 10 years ago I used to lift weights all the time. I used to be this big, this strong. And they'll over-exaggerate it. But as you go through life, you're going to notice there's a lot of people like that. A lot of people like that. And it's oftentimes because they trained at a period of their life where they didn't have any physically demands or anything from a job. And they built a certain base up, and then they quit because it was just too strenuous for them to keep up. But I would tell most people, don't do that. Come in and deload. Keep training, just deload, deal with it. Find ways to help with the recovery till you adapt. Hot baths, Epsom salt baths, massages, whatever it takes for you to keep yourself physically active, to keep your training up. It's going to be a good thing. And people need to remember, lifting weights for people who aren't going to compete in anything really is about fitness in the long term. And a lot of people, and that's one of the big things I've seen a lot of, your biggest dropout rate are people who train purely for aesthetics, just because they want to look good, but they do it at a point in their life to where they don't have many physical demands or stressors. And then the moment they go start doing a job that's more demanding, they find it more difficult to get to the gym and train. And they also realize that, if they were just trying to attract someone else, that money is worth more than a body is. So they end up putting their efforts into that, and they drop out of training. And that's what you see a lot of. And unfortunately, that's not good for those people in the long term, because those are the people who end up, by the time they're my age, they don't train anymore. And they talk about how they used to be, but then they start finding their bodies falling apart. And you don't want to be that person. So what I would recommend to anyone who finds themselves in this situation, do whatever you have to do to recover. And usually once you're used to these new demands, usually about 3 weeks into subjecting your body to a new demand, a new stimulus, because you know what, being on your feet, manual labor is its own stimulus, but even being on your feet for 40 or 50 hours a week is a new stimulus for most people if they haven't done that before. That is a new training stimulus. So what you need to do is make sure that you keep your strength training up. Even if you need to deload for that 3 weeks, it's going to help you hold on to the motor patterns of the lift. It's going to help you hold on to muscle fibers, as far as like fibers not shifting from, say, strength oriented to a little more stamina oriented, because you'll find that with intermediate fibers, and it's going to help you keep your strength up. But the reality is, a lot of people feel that they're in shape until they get into something physically demanding, and they learn they're not as in shape as they thought they were. Like in Brittany's case, she had quit doing cardio for a while. She was doing a lot of cardio because her actual freelance work was a little more sporadic. So she was doing a lot of cardio. Then she quit for a while and was only lifting, and she found out that strength and endurance carry her over to each other a little bit, but not completely. But what I would tell people who are like, well, how does anyone do this? I mean, you're going to have to sacrifice. No, you're only going to have to sacrifice in the sense of paying more attention to your recovery, because you're putting extra stressors on your body than just the gym. A lot of these guys who you see who go in and train, you look at their amount of just fluff and pump they do, those people aren't ready for the real world. They're going to find that once they have any sort of remotely demanding job or a full-time job and a career, a lot of the college students and stuff who you see doing that, they're going to find that they don't have time to spend hours in the gym doing fluff and pump. They don't have the time to do it if they want to have any social life outside of the gym and their job. All right, or any sort of life outside of that. They're going to find that these 2-hour-a-day workouts, 6 days a week, aren't worth it, because they're not gaining any more muscle from it than they would with a more minimalist program. Then the physical demands of that, with maybe a job where they're on their feet, on a sales floor, or anything else, they start finding it's not going to work for them. So remember, the people who do these hours and hours of fluff and pump, odds are they don't have any sort of physically demanding job if they're doing that, and they might not even have a normal full-time job in the traditional sense if they can get away with that. So you see YouTubers doing it, but not normal people. But there is hope. You know what? I've also known someone, if you guys recall my last big powerlifting meet, international powerlifting meet I did, and I took my bronze medal and ended up getting invited to Worlds. I had a really big class competing too. There was 13 guys entered in my class. But the guy who won the class went on to Worlds, and I mean, he won the class by a big margin. He's a strong guy. He's a construction worker. The guy is a full-time construction worker. So there's an example of someone showing, and he's in his late 30s. That's showing that you can combine a full-time manual labor job and still compete at a fairly high level in a strength sport and be successful. It's just a matter of balancing your life around it. And once you adapt and get used to it, because this guy's been doing construction work for years and years, he's been lifting weights for years and years, you will eventually build your work capacity up to be able to handle it. And when you do, then you're going to be successful. And by that point, you will have learned how to balance your recovery around everything. But what you will find is that people who are training hard, who also have in any job that's physically demanding on any level, those people, recovery becomes everything. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.